Okay, good morning everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Five Bells workshops. So this is our 25 season. This is the 7th workshop in this season of workshops. And AI has been a topic of great interest to a lot of people. So it's a new topic, right? It's not something that we've all had much experience with. But you hear about it everywhere, so I can understand why it's interesting. It's interesting to me as well. I don't use it that much actually, and now I've tried, I don't need to. So we've got quite a lot of stuff to cover today, so we're going to move through the slides today. Maybe we'll do questions at the end, but I have got 3 class exercises for you all to do, so keep your thinking hats on. So the topics I'm going to cover today, I'm going to talk about what AI is and what it isn't. But we'll talk about different kinds of AI. There's more than one kind of AI. And we'll talk about how machines learn. We'll look at some of the things they can do, like computer vision, machine translation, and then we'll look at ways we can actually use AI. So, at the end of this, you'll know a little bit about what AI is, what it can do, and how you can use it, hopefully. So let's get started. So AI, so everyone knows, it stands for artificial intelligence. So what does that mean? What does artificial intelligence even mean? So let's break it down. What does artificial mean? So that's the simple bit, actually. It just means it's non-biological. It's a machine. It's a very large machine, actually. It's not even one machine. It's very many machines. An AI system comprises a set of very specialist computers and software associated with them. If you go into an AI data center, it looks a bit like this. This is quite a fancy one with fancy lighting, probably for the photo shoot. But they do look like this. These things are huge. These things are bigger than fridges. Inside each of these cabinets are something like 20 computers, and there are thousands of these. So there'll be 20,000 computers or thereabouts in one of these data centers. And there are hundreds of these data centers. So these things are huge. When you talk about operating in the cloud, you're using one of these computers in this data center. There's another picture just for scale. There's one guy there. Now the thing about all of these computers, they're all interconnected. Each one of these computers, there's 20 in each of these racks, and there's hundreds of racks, they can all talk to one another. And the way they are interconnected, we call that a neural network. And it kind of tries to mimic the way the human brain works. So that's an important thing to remember for later on. So the next bit, artificial intelligence. What do we mean by intelligence? That's a hard. Before we talk about machine intelligence, what do we mean about human intelligence? Now, you might have an opinion about these guys, okay? But we're not very good at measuring intelligence with people, right? Okay, I'll put a genius up and a kind of a crazy character. But if we swap those for another 2 people, anyone know who these are?
Yeah, Schoenberg.
Picasso, right? And Mozart, actually. So you've got Picasso. So they're both very intelligent people. But how would you measure their intelligence? What test would you give them? Would you give them a maths test? May not be very good at maths. Give them a music test. One guy might be at a disadvantage. Measuring intelligence is not an easy thing. So Alan Turing actually considered this back in 1949, a long time ago. So AI is not particularly new. The concept of machine intelligence. Alan Turing, probably considered the father of modern computing. He was the chief code breaker at Bletchley Park in the war. He came up with a very neat idea. He said a machine can be considered to be intelligent if another person can't distinguish it from a human being. And he came up with a very neat way of doing that test. It's kind of a simple experiment. You have 3 rooms, 3 isolated rooms. And in one room is the person doing the test. They sit in that room. And in the other 2 rooms, in one of the rooms is a person, and in the other room is a machine, artificial intelligence machine. And the person doing the test sends messages to these other 2 rooms. Now, not by voice, because the computer couldn't give a convincingly, human-like voice response, and not by writing, because the computer can't write, by text messages, like WhatsApp. So you might say, "Hi, I'm Alan, how are you?" And you get a response back from these 2 rooms. And if the responses come back and you can't tell whether they came from the human room or the machine room, then you consider that machine to be intelligent. So in reality, what it's doing, the machine is mimicking a human being. And he actually called this test the imitation game. Anyone remember there was a film called The Imitation Game? That's where the name came from, actually. But today, any test we devise to test a machine's intelligence, we call the Turing test, in homage to Alan Turing. So you're a very clever guy, a very clever way of determining a machine's intelligence. And the thing about this actually is that a machine doesn't need to be right to be considered intelligent. Because if you ask a person a fact, like how heavy is the Titanic, I've no idea, don't make a guess at it, but don't expect people to be right, so why should we expect machines to be right? An intelligent conversation isn't necessarily factually correct, so just bear that in mind. What AI isn't. Now, I don't know, some people often make the confusion between robots and AI, and we shouldn't. The AI is not these things. A robot like this might use AI to understand speech, because AI is good at understanding language, might use AI to talk. And both of these robots might use computer vision so they're aware of their surroundings. If you're a robot welding cars together, it'd be useful to be able to see that the world is good after you've made the weld. So computer vision and computer speech is part of AI, and robots might use that. But AI itself is not a robot. Confusingly, sometimes they're called chatbots because they talk. Right? That's the reason, or they can communicate in language. And so this term chatbots sometimes refers to AI, but they're not robots in this sense. Does that make sense? Okay. So, what can AI do? And this is really what sets it apart from ordinary computing. AI allows machines to learn from data, recognize patterns, solve problems, and make decisions. Those are quite new things in the world of computing. And actually, these skills allow AI to perform tasks that would ordinarily have required human beings. Things like understanding language. You can talk to them in normal language. Don't need to say please or thank you. Or identifying objects in a photo. You can show a photo to an AI, and you can say that's a car or that's a cat, and there's a distinction between objects. So that's quite a complicated thing for a machine to do. Human beings are really good at this, by the way. Our brains are wired in such a way that we can recognize patterns. That's what we do from childhood, is learn patterns. But computers, very specialist computers, are now learning to do this. And where's AI used? Everywhere, I think is the real answer to that. When you pick up your phone and you face unlock it, that's AI. When you use Siri or Hey Google, that's AI. If you plot a route from London to Manchester on your sat-nav in your car or on your phone, it uses AI to work out which is the best route. There may be lots of routes, there are lots of routes. There may be one route that's long but faster roads, one that's shorter but slower roads, one that's short and fast but has got roadworks. How does it know which one to offer you? So we use AI for making that decision. Netflix, if you use Netflix for watching movies, it keeps tabs of which movies you watch. And then it suggests films based on your viewing history. It might pick up particular actors you like, or directors you like, or genres of films that you like. So it uses AI to do that. Actually, advertising on the web. Whenever you talk about something and then you see those adverts pop up on your Facebook feed or WhatsApp, whatever, that's all AI driven. In fact, advertising is nearly all driven by AI now. And call centres use AI. Who's phoned a call centre and got, press 1 to pay your bill, or say no if you don't want to pay your bill, then press 1 if you want to hear your balance, all that kind of stuff. That's all AI. And there are different kinds of AI. So types of AI. So that call centre AI I just mentioned, that's called predictive AI. So it is AI, it understands language, it responds in natural language, but it's got a very small repertoire. You can't ask it about a recipe or an itinerary for a holiday. It only knows about the things that the call centre are of interest to the call centre. So, typically you phone up a bank and it'll tell you, how you can open an account or check your balance or something like that. This is predictive AI, and you can predict what its next thing is going to be. If you say, no, I don't want to pay my bill, you can predict it's going to give you some more options, right? It's called predictive AI. It takes your responses and gives you 1, 2, or maybe 4 choices. Very simplistic. If you say something it doesn't understand, it'll say, I'm going to connect you to an agent, right? And then you'll be in a long queue waiting for the one human being they've got in the call centre.
How do you get it to connect you to a human?
Well, they don't want you to talk to a human being because they want you to talk to their robot, right? So the idea is that the robot, the chatbot or this predictive AI, should be able to answer 99% of the questions they get. They know the questions they get, right? And remember, they learn. Every one of these interactions they have with the customer is recorded. And if they find that it has to go to a human agent, that means that range of options has failed in some ways. They can add another option on for future use. So they're constantly monitoring these things. And they're getting pretty good, right? It used to be in the olden days, you get through, you'd be in a queue, you get 1 or 2 questions, and then you get through to a human being. Now you get quite a lot of options before you get through to a human being.
So do humans program the options?
Yes. These are, nearly always, these are programmatic and have been predetermined.
It's like a very sophisticated computer.
So it is so we'll talk a little bit about machine learning and the differences between the ways they actually behave. It's quite interesting actually that there are different kinds of behaviour based on the different kinds of learning that they do. Nowadays when we talk about AI, we really are talking about generative AI. Okay? Sometimes shortened to Gen AI. Not to be confused with Gen X, Y and Z. With Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z refers to a generation of people born at different 80s, 90s, 2000s. This is Gen for generative AI. And why is it called generative? It's because Gen AI can generate original content. Okay? So it's not just regurgitating something off the web. It's actually generating new content like text. You can ask it to generate something. It can create speech, it can create images, videos, music. I was playing some music earlier. It can even generate software codes. It can even program itself. So generative AI is very powerful because it can generate new code. Now, I said earlier, don't always expect the machine to be right. Machines aren't always right. So just because it can generate new text, don't always expect it to be correct. You have to be careful. You have to look at the output and see, is it sensible? Is it what I want? You have to be wary of what it gives you. So generative AI is trained with a lot of information. So anyone know what that number is? It's very big. So that's 1,000, 150,000, that's a million, that's a billion, that's a trillion, a million. It's 150 trillion words. There aren't that many words in the English language, by the way. The total works of Shakespeare combined is less than 1 million words. So this is a huge number of words, right? That's why they have so many computers in those data centers. So it's been trained with a huge amount of data. And this data, plus our neural network, all those computers you saw in that data center, plus the training, we'll get onto the training in a minute, that creates the large language model. Okay, you sometimes see this word being used. So why do you call it the large language model? Well, we call it large because it is. It's got a lot of stuff in it. It's enormous. Language, because it comprises words, as simple as that. It comprises words from mostly English language. There's some other European languages and non-European languages, but mostly English words. And then model. Now models are an interesting word because most people, when they think about model, think about a child's toy, right? A toy aeroplane or a toy car or something like that. But when engineers and scientists use the word model, what we mean is a representation of something. Okay, so this model represents a numerical version of those words. So you think of a model, a good example of a model is your bank statement. Your bank statement is a piece of paper that represents your money. It's not the physical money, it's not even a model of your money, but it represents your finances. It shows you what goes in, what comes out, what's left behind. So this model is a numerical, just a set of numbers that represent all of the associations of all of those different words. That's what the large language model is. And the best models that we have today are called generative pre-trained transformers, a bit of a mouthful. So generative, because they can generate new stuff, came across that here. Pre-trained, because they've gone to some training, which we'll talk about in a minute. And transformer relates to this bit here. The neural network that transforms these words into numbers. That's what the GPT means. So now you know what GPT in ChatGPT stands for. Generative pre-trained. And in fact, nearly all generative AIs now are generative pre-trained transformers of one kind or another. So machine learning. So learning a new skill. Learning is actually a complex process, right? We all went through a learning process. Who remembers their 7 times table? Everyone? Just try it. 1 times 7 is? 2 times 7? 4? Right, so we can do that quite easily, right? We recall that very easily. It's not difficult at all. But we learned it a long time ago. It probably wasn't so easy to learn. We could probably go up to 12 times 12 if we have the time or the interest right now. And who still rides a bicycle? Hands up. There's quite a few of you here, I know who do. But we could probably all get on a bike and ride a few yards on the road. I'd probably fall off, but you know. But when you learned to ride a bicycle, it wasn't so easy. How long before your dad, probably your dad, took the training wheels off? So remember, learning is not easy. Learning takes some time. And that's true of machines as well. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and therefore a lot of money to train an AI system. Okay? So those vast data centers are run to train AI systems. But just like human beings, once the system's been trained, it can perform these tasks quite simply. So your phone can do Face ID, and it doesn't need thousands of computers. A little tiny computer in here can do Face ID, but this bit of software that was trained to identify faces took 20,000 computers in a big data center and probably years of training to figure that out. Once you've worked it out, you can do it quite quickly. So that's an interesting thing. There's a difference between learning something and performing something. And the more times you perform it, just like, practice makes perfect, get better at it. So these systems iteratively learn how to do things better and better. Okay. So machine learning. So machines learn through a variety of different ways. And just think about how we learn as human beings. So there's this, in machine learning we call it deep learning, machine learning and artificial intelligence. In human beings, if you think about a baby, a toddler, learns by becoming aware of its environment. And it makes a sort of a mental map of its awareness of its environment by reaching out, seeing things, touching things. So all of that is kind of stuff that machines do in a very similar way to human beings. This is where the large language model comes in. Give the machine all of this information of language, and children basically acquire information about their environment by interacting with their environment. Machine learning is this human supervised element, and for human beings we call that school, or your parents, right? You go somewhere and you say A for apple, B for whatever, ball, C for cat, D for dog. We give people information in a structured way. And machine learning is very similar. We show images that are tagged. If we show images of cars to machines, they're all tagged to say this is a car. So the machine slowly builds up a vast variety of pictures that it now recognises as a car. When it's shown one that hasn't got the label on it, says, oh, that looks a bit like what I'd seen earlier. So then that's machine learning. That simple AI systems stop around there. So when you're talking to that agent at the call centre, it probably is somewhere between these two areas of learning. It doesn't need to know much more than that. An AI system continues learning. It adapts as it operates. Now, human beings, that yellow circle is enormous. We never stop learning. We adapt all the time. That's the intelligent part of human beings, is that we are able to adapt to our environment. We find ourselves somewhere new. We might have set out in the morning to go somewhere, and if we find our plans are thwarted because the bus we were going to take doesn't show up, we'll quickly work out that we can take a train or a taxi or some other mechanism. We continue to adapt. Good artificial intelligence systems are also able to adapt to their environments. And this circle is getting bigger. As the systems get more and more complex and more capable, this circle gets bigger and bigger. So generative AI operates around here, the predictive AI systems operate down here. Okay. I'm going through fairly quickly, so you've got, we'll do a couple of exercises and then we'll stop for a bit. So I thought it might be fun to make a language model. Yeah? So what do we need? We need lots of words. We'll come up with some words. In fact, you guys are going to generate the words in a minute. We need a neural network, right? So a neural network comprises of lots of different computers. So there's about 25 of you here. So each one of you is going to be one of those computers in the neural network. And you're allowed to talk to one another if you don't agree during the class session. I've got the casting vote. And then we'll do some training. So the first part of the exercise is, can you identify some objects? So I'm going to give you some pictures and you've got to tell me what they are. Kitten. Got one kitten. Does everyone agree on cat?
Yes.
Cat, okay. Now, I've got some notes here about what this is. So it says in my notes that a cat has pointy ears, large eyes, fur, and 4 legs. That guy's only got 2 legs. Are you sure it's still a cat? We'll go with cat for now, okay. Dog. Again, my notes said dog's got a tail. But we go with dog for now, shall we? Elephant. Now, pointy ears, you could have said it's a cat, but alright, we'll go with rabbit. Okay. So we've actually all agreed we didn't get too many, dissenting voices. That might have been a kitten and a cat. That's interesting. If we weren't sure, we would have to have had a vote. But I think the cat won out. So these are our words for our large language model. So you've done very well on the object identification, recognition phase. And now the second part of the test is now we've got these words. And we've got to find some associations. This basically is a word association game. That's what a large language model is. Can you see any associations between these words?
Animals.
Very good. So these ones are in the animal kingdom, and those are plants.
Wild and domestic.
Very good. So these ones you might say are pets or domestic animals, and these two are wild animals. And then even then, the plant flowers, there's lots of different kinds of flowers, there's different kinds of trees. There might be trees and flowers are separate parts of the plant kingdom. So you can see straight away that there's some linkages between these things. And then we can go further. If you look at the tree, we can start pulling the tree apart. So, well, there's some leaves here. So leaves are somehow associated with tree. So if you hear the word leaf, you think, well, that might have something to do with the tree. The leaf has got branches. It's got a trunk. Hang on a minute. This guy's got a trunk. So the trunk lives in both of those worlds. And the trunk's got bark on the outside of it. This guy's got a bark. So you get to see that even with 7 words, the relationships between words get complex, right? So that's why we start with 150 trillion words. There aren't 150 trillion words in the English language, but you need to look at these words in different contexts to find out all the different linkages. If you just saw bark and heard it associated with a tree, you'd never realise that this guy can bark. So that's why this thing is fed with so much data, so it works out all the different links between these words. So that's what a large language model is.
Does it do that automatically, or does that require you?
So this is done by just giving lots of text, and the neural network, it's a probability function, so it works out the linkages, so that is done automatically. And by giving enough text, you see all these words in different contexts, you can work out how well linked they are. And actually what that engine allows us to do is predictability. So if I give you a simple phrase, you can probably finish this. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. And you can probably finish the whole poem, right? So human beings fed with a simple phrase, we can go back into our memory banks and pull out the rest of the phrase. We're good at that. So can an AI system now. But it does it differently to the way we do it, actually. So if I say twinkle, twinkle, you'll know the whole thing, like little star, shining bright and all that. But it doesn't do it that way. If you give it twinkle, twinkle, it actually finds little as the first. It just looks at the next word. And then it puts twinkle, twinkle, little back in and finds star. And then it puts that in and that's how it goes on. It just finds the next word. So its prediction engine actually only looks for the next word in the sequence. And it builds it up like that. Which is interesting. So second class exercise, you guys did pretty well in identifying objects, right? So this should be a piece of cake. Can you spot the chihuahua? So, can you see how many dogs and how many are cakes?
3rd row, last on the right.
So there's 8 dogs and 8 cakes here. So sometimes images can be confusing, even for humans, right? So it's not always obvious. So imagine if you're a computer trying to figure out, and you've only got a second to look at that image. It might be a car going down the road and you've got to read the number plate. You sometimes don't have a lot of time to discriminate what's what. So you're not always going to get it right. But if you gave all of these dog images to the computer, it would figure out, and you told it that's what a chihuahua looks like, it would figure out which is a chihuahua. And then you have to give all of those pictures of those muffins and say, well, those are muffins. And sometimes it might get confused, just like we do. Okay. So you can see some of the difficulties of doing things that appear to be simple, but not always as simple in the real world. So computer vision. AI can be trained to identify objects, and we trained ourselves to identify these objects as toddlers. Remember, that's what our brains did. So if we use pictures of cars, it will identify cars. If we use faces, it will learn to identify faces. And in fact, that's the one that's of most interest. Face ID is a big part of AI. Just as that example showed you, the training images need to be comprehensive and representative for the system to work well. Just showing it one image isn't good enough. And you saw when we looked at that cat, We know a cat has 4 legs, but in that picture you can only see 2. You need to see a cat from lots of different angles, and maybe from above and from below, from all the different sides, to work out that sometimes you don't see all of the object, but you still can recognise what it is. So choosing the images is really important. If you don't choose good images, then your recognition won't be very good. That's quite a challenge, actually, getting enough data. So where do we get all this data from, by the way? Any ideas where we get all this data from?
Google.
Off the web? Yeah, basically off the web. If anything that's on the web is scraped and used as training images, because there's just so much stuff on the web. In fact, that was one of the challenges that early AI system researchers had. They didn't have enough data to feed into their systems. Now we have no shortage of data. Every single picture you take that's in the cloud can be used for training. They don't actually own that data, but they might use it for training. That's one of the things they do. And that's why companies like Google and Microsoft have got access to this vast amount of data, are able to make very good AI systems and train them on realistic, real-world data, words and images. So where do we use computer vision? Object detection, recognition, identification, face identification, automatic number plate recognition, that kind of thing. Self-driving cars, becoming aware of your environment, the environment that's changing dynamically. So we have AI systems that can drive cars, we have AI systems that can fly aeroplanes, that sort of thing isn't particularly difficult these days. Medical image analysis, that's a really interesting one. Looking at the scans is something that a very skilled doctor can do and look for something. But the AI systems are very good at this. They're really good at finding anomalies in pictures. And reading text. So you can point at a bit of text and it can read it and convert it to digital text. Now that's been around for what is called optical character recognition. Reading text actually isn't a particularly hard thing, but they're getting good at reading lots of different scripts. It used to be you had to have a very neatly spaced single font, kind of simple text to do this. Now most modern computers can read pretty much anything. So actually it's interesting when you look at language and text. So we looked earlier at words and word linkages. So words are quite complex. Text is easy, it's just picking a letter at a time, right? You're just understanding what those letters are. But the good systems will actually understand context. And if there wasn't a space here, it might actually work out that those are 2 words, because it understands context and understands words. So picking out words and meaning from text is actually the next step after you've got that. So after you've got text, that kind of nicely brings us to the next topic, which is machine translation. So anyone used AI to translate anything ever? Yeah?
Google Translate.
Google Translate, yes. You've used Google Translate? Yeah, which is a very nice thing, right? It's you can take a picture of some text in Italian or French or Chinese and get it converted to English, and it works really well. And so this is something that machines have got very good at. So let's try translating something. So a piece of cake in Italian is una fetta di torta. Right? A piece of cake. That's nice and easy. But what about it's a piece of cake? That's a different phrase, right? It's a gioco da ragazzi, a child's game. So there's different meaning, right? Context matters. So it's not always easy to translate. So language is complex. It has idiomatic expressions. It has expressions that don't always make sense, like the chicken is ready to eat. What does that mean? Talking about a chicken in the farmyard or a chicken out of the oven, It could mean either. And then word order. Word order in different languages varies. So in English it tends to be subject, verb, object, like some API. Not good on Polish, right. And some Asian languages which have the verb at the end, So it varies in different languages, so you have to be conscious of that. Now the systems are getting good at that. They're pretty good. They do understand idiomatic expressions, but they don't always get it right. They do understand some ambiguity, and sometimes they'll point it out. They'll say that I'm not sure. I've translated this. And if you ask it, one interesting thing about AI systems is they are trained to be helpful. So if you ask it something, it'll give you an answer. It may not be right. If you then ask it to go back and reflect on what it's told you, can you just check that's right? It might actually tell you, sorry, I got that wrong, and then tell you where it got it wrong as well. So use its own capabilities to fact check its own output. So if you translate something and you're not 100% sure it's right, ask it, do you think that's right? Are the ambiguous or idiomatic expressions properly translated? And it might go back and have another go and pick those specific ones out and say, well, you might have some choices here.
Like a deep dive.
So,
A deep dive into the actual question.
yeah.
Yeah.
How
Is
do you
that
ask-
what that is?
So you can ask it to reflect on its own output and go back and check its workings. You can actually ask it to show you its workings if you want. It will do that.
You just type in, are you sure? Or something?
You type on there are different ways of phrasing it actually. So we'll come to that actually. That's really interesting. So when you interact with AI, we're used to using Google, right? So most people are used to using Google, and in Google we're using a search engine. Now it's got complex because Google now uses AI. But typically in Google, you're putting in a few keywords. If I put in washing machine, it'll find places that sell washing machines, right? It's a commercial engine, so it's going to point me to Argos or Currys or John Lewis and say, here's a washing machine. So you don't need to put in very much, because all it's doing is matching your phrase with an instance of that phrase somewhere else on the web. Here, think more about like you're talking to an expert. So if you just say washing machine to some random person in the street, you think you're a lunatic, right? So don't say it like that. Phrase it as a complete question. Put some detail around it and give it a task to do. So I'd like to translate this document and point out any idiomatic expressions that don't translate well, because sometimes they don't translate well. Or is this text ambiguous before you translate it? So ask it to look at it, just like you might ask your teacher to look at it. And after it's giving you the output, say, well, thank you for that. Don't need to say thank you, but can you look at it again? Can you reflect on some of them use the word reflect. Can you reflect on that output and tell me if it's correct? So different engines use different terminology for the way they might examine the data.
Salim, would you do that verbally or?
Or in typing. They do have voice input as well, so sometimes you can talk to these engines, but typically you're typing.
But you can't do that with Google Translate.
No, you can't use it with Google. Google Translate is different. So this is using the AI engine for translation. So this is slightly different. Good point. One sort of thing that we noticed when you use these translation engines, because those 150 trillion words were mostly English, it does have a bias towards the English language. So if you're trying to translate between two non-English languages, particularly minority languages, you find it probably doesn't do a very good job. So sometimes it's worthwhile actually using an intermediate step and actually using English as an intermediate step. The reason for that is it's unlikely that it's been fed any documents that have both Tibetan and Gaelic on the same document or in the same document. Highly unlikely. But it might have seen that and that. And so it knows the word linkages between those two languages. So it will make a good job of that and a good job of that, and make a terrible job of that. So just going between English and most European languages is actually pretty easy, and some of the the bigger Asian languages. But some of the sort of smaller languages, it doesn't do a very good job. So how are we doing for time? I'm a little bit early actually, so any questions around that? Yeah.
When I've read articles where journalists, state that they're getting a relationship with, their AI. So, is it just that you type into your Google search engine, and that's how the conversation happens?
We'll look at AI later on in the next exercise actually. So you can use an app on your phone independently of Google. So nowadays when you use Google and do a keyword search, it'll do this keyword search and you'll see the first thing that will come up is an AI summary.
Yeah.
So it'll look through all the results it's got and then summarize those for you. And sometimes that's actually quite useful. It saves you reading 5 or 6 pages. But there's a bias in their system, and a lot of the subscribers to Google pay Google to get their results at the top. So the AI summary may not be what you want. Maybe it's what they want to show you. So I wouldn't use Google as a starting point for AI. There are specific AI apps that we'll come to in a minute that you would use for your AI, and you would type into those apps. They look a bit like Google. You type your question. The input into an AI engine is called a prompt, and so you write your prompt into the AI engine. It'll come back with something, and then you can continue to have a conversation. In fact, you can have a conversation with an AI. Underlying all of this, there is what we call a chatbot. It started off as being able to have a conversation. You can still have a conversation. You can have a mock interview. One of the things that some of the AI systems are very good for, you can say, I'm applying for a job. Maybe I want a temporary job over Christmas. And you can say, well, can you give me a mock interview? And they'll set up a mock interview. They're really good at that. So you can have quite a sophisticated conversation with an AI system. So people who are fearful, maybe who haven't had much experience of interviews, can practice with an AI system rather than go out and screw up their first job interview.
Does it give you feedback?
And it will give you feedback. You can ask for it to give you feedback at the end, and it will do so. Yeah. So yeah, very sophisticated. Yeah.
So I've got 2 points here. One is that I've heard it uses an enormous amount of resource. I mean, there's a sort of question
Yes.
about that. And
Yes.
given what your pictures of the computers like,
Yes.
I realise.
Yeah, they're not very green. That's a good question. So that's a really good question actually. So we use AI. So AI is really, it's been around. I was saying to Tony earlier before while we were setting up. AI has been around for a long time. The simple chatbots have been around for at least a quarter of a century now. So a long time. And the generative AI has been around for 5 years or more. So it's got better and better, and more people are using it. But it's been used, at work, since COVID times. So it's not new. The data centers are enormous and use huge amounts of power. So OpenAI, which is a company that makes ChatGPT, the guy there has got ambitions to make more and more of these data centers, and is thinking of building a nuclear-powered power station just for his data center. So it's that level of power. So it's a crazy large amount of power. So from a green point of view, they're not very good. So we use them for frivolous things like, can you paint me a picture of a flying horse or something like that? I mean, that doesn't use a huge amount of power, but the aggregate amount of power that we use adds up. So yeah, there's a debate going on around, how should we be, how does this technology fit in? And then again, we can use AI to save power. We use AI to optimize our power grids, our traffic flows, aircraft departure and so on. So flights that are coming across the Atlantic, for example, now, you remember you used to fly into London, and if it was busy, you'd be circling around over Kent, basically. So airlines hate it, passengers hate it, because you're nearly home and now you're circling around over London because you've arrived and there's no landing spot. But you're also polluting the air over the UK, right? Airplanes flying around, all of the air over Kent gets polluted. So now we don't do that. What we do, we stack them in flight. So we know, and this is done using AI, so we know the scheduled arrival of flights, plus the delays caused by weather or whatever departure delays there were. And so we actually ask the flights to slow down en route. So the pilots will slow down. No one cares if they just slow down en route, they don't notice that. They actually burn less fuel, so they're happy with that. And then they land, when you get to London, you land. You're no longer stacked for a long time unless there's been some real screw up. So we use AI to do that, that saves fuel. So some areas it helps, some areas it doesn't, it's a difficult question. So you had a question, yeah?
Thanks. Is it largely about colossal amount of data lookup? The way you presented some of this, it seems to be that. Or is it about something more subtle than that? So for example, in the bark versus bark thing, you could teach it about the words, but if you taught it biology, it wouldn't have any confusion in the first place.
So no, it's not just about massive lookup. It isn't a database you look up. So unlike a search engine, which is you give it a keyword and it searches through and finds a match. It's just matching words, and that's just a search engine. The artificial intelligence doesn't have a database. This large language model is a distilled model of words, and it's using those words to gain an understanding of natural language, and then attempts to generate a response based on your prompt. So it is more like an intelligence. Sorry?
Is it a linkage thing?
It's a linkage thing, yeah. The large language, all of it is really related to this large language model. The large language model is a very complex three-dimensional mathematical probability matrix, is actually what it is, that is used to then parse natural language. You talk to it or type at it, it works out what you're saying, understands the context of what you're saying, and then attempts to generate a response, a sensible response, based on your question.
So it is about, in that example, bark versus bark, it is about language, not about biology.
Correct. It's all about understanding language, yes.
So it doesn't really know anything about biology.
It might as well. So now there's several elements to this engine. So just like if I asked you, where does the word bark come up? You don't need to know the biology of a dog or a tree to tell me that there's bark on a tree and a dog barks, right? So a human being would respond based on understanding the word, and that's how AI would respond. Now, AI is also programmed with sort of a knowledge base. So it has access to a knowledge base. One of the tests actually. So when we test AI systems, we test them on language understanding, comprehension, mathematics, and world knowledge. That's one. There's a whole bunch of tests that we do. You said, how do you test human IQ? There is a similar set of tests for testing machine intelligence, and so reasoning and world knowledge is part of that set. But they're not as high up as understanding language, actually. So the ranking is understanding language is right at the top, comprehension, and then reasoning. Mathematics is easy for machines, so that's not a really tough one. But world knowledge is in that mix, so it's in there as well.
Does AI learn accent?
No.
No. I'm just wondering, could it understand a Scottish accent?
Yeah. So that comes up quite often actually. So how good is it on accent? So
Monty Python,
Oh, okay.
one of the two people in the lift. The two
Yes.
British people
Oh,
in
okay.
the bus.
yeah, exactly. You've seen that one. So when it comes to language comprehension, that is one of the problems. That's one of the areas that people are working on actually. Is understand. So we've got pretty good at understanding language in noisy environments. So I'm talking to you now. You're all quiet. If we're in a pub and talking, and everyone's talking, human beings are good at zoning in on one voice and kind of focusing on that sound and taking it. So AI systems can do that now. So if you're on a Zoom call, Zoom by the way does that.
I wear two hearing aids.
Right.
And now the AI in the hearing aid that can determine what is noise, and what is speech.
Yeah. So phones do that actually. So if you put it on speakerphone and you're talking to someone using speakerphone, the microphone actually discriminates between background noise and your voice. On Zoom calls, if a dog barks or something, it suppresses that. It recognises that dog barking isn't part of the conversation, so it actually suppress that. So there are lots of AI systems that will suppress background noise. And they're getting very good at discriminating human spoken word, and they're trained with a variety of voices. So when I said no, it's not good at accents, that's a bit of a sort of flippant answer. They have been trained on more than one kind of accent. And actually the early systems struggle with female voices because most of the researchers happen to be men. So most of the voices that we used in the early days happen to be male voices. And because female voices are higher register, it turned out that they didn't bother listening to the high frequency components because there weren't much there in the men's voices they used. In fact, the early models of human voice, which were used for computer encoding of voice, actually came from the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, and there were 3 guys who built the model for that, and they only used male voices for that. And so we use that encoding on mobile phones. When you talk on a mobile phone, your voice gets encoded into digital code sent to the other end. If you remember mobile phones back in the days with Nokias, it sounded very sort of kind of Dalek-y, kind of robotic. That's because they didn't actually encode any of the high frequencies because there weren't any in the Fraunhofer Model 1. And then they changed that to include female voices. So so voices and recognition of speech. Again, so there's a blending of technologies. So we have some of that coming from the telephony world because they had to handle speech, and some of it coming from the compute world, and some of it coming from the AI world, and all of these things come together. So yeah, that's. The more we use voice recognition, the more the AI will learn. So the AI systems are adaptive and do learn. I don't know whether they'll learn from you talking to them. I mean, actually, to some extent they do. So anyone here got a smart speaker at home, like an Alexa or something like that? Yeah? When you get it, it asks you to talk to it for a little bit to understand your voice. Have you done that? Yeah? And then when you talk to it, it often responds with your name. It says, hello. And mine says, hello, Salim, in the morning when I talk to it. And my wife says, it says, hello, Stacey. So it recognises our voices. So it does build up a pattern of your own voice. So yes, they are adaptive to some extent. Annoyingly, even though my wife's American, it understands me better than Stacey. She always annoys her because Alexa's an American thing. But it doesn't understand the Californian accent as well as mine.
All this must be incredibly expensive to set up and do all these computers. And who's funding it and in what interest?
That's a good question. So actually, I'll talk a little bit about that later, but let's cover it now. So these systems, you can use all of these AI systems for free. And they do place some limits on free usage because it costs money, as you say, it costs a lot of money to set this up. So the systems to build those data centers costs an absolute fortune, and to run those places costs an absolute fortune. They're largely funded by advertising revenue. They do charge businesses, so for business use, you pay for this. So all of the businesses that use this will pay, just like you subscribe to Microsoft Office to use their software tools, you subscribe to these AI systems to use these software tools. It's just another business tool as far as they're concerned. For home use, for you and I, it's free to use, but they place limits. You might not be able to do all of the really smart things without a subscription, or you may be limited in how many times you can use it in a 24-hour period or a week or something like that. You might only be able to do 15 translations or something. I can't remember the limits they set, but they're not going to impact you and I because we're not going to have that much work. So but they do place limits. So there is a cost. But it's like a lot of these things. Google doesn't charge you, explicitly for the use of their services, but they kind of get money out of you. Yeah, there is some transaction that goes on in the background. So how are we doing for time? Should we just stop for a break? Yeah.
Can you talk about Gemini AI?
I will talk about all of them actually after the break. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. So the ones I'll talk about just quickly, ChatGPT, which is one that most people have heard of, Gemini, which is from Google, Copilot from Microsoft, and Meta AI from Facebook and WhatsApp, which you probably all see on your WhatsApp page. Okay, let's stop there for tea. Okay, we're going to start again after the break. Welcome back. So, we talked quite a lot about AI in the first session, about what it is, what it can do, and the kind of use cases you might use it for. I'm just going to answer a couple of questions that came up during the break. So, the first one is, are we becoming too reliant on AI as a society or as a species? And that's a good question, really. It's a sort of philosophical question that you might argue about, and there is no simple answer to that. The fact is, we rely upon lots of different systems as a species now. We couldn't easily live without electricity, and that's not a new thing. We couldn't probably have lived without electricity 50 years ago. We've become too dependent on that. Hundreds of years ago, we became dependent on agriculture. There was a time in our distant history when we all knew how to fend for ourselves. We could grow our own food, kill our own animals, and live quite happily in a mountainside somewhere. But we can't do that anymore. We've been unable to live without the help of specialists and organisations and structures that allow societies to work. And the reason for that is really scale. So when you get to population densities that human beings live in now in cities, in urbanisations. In London, 10 million people, other cities bigger than that, 20 million people. It's impossible for people to be self-sufficient. We don't have the space, the skills, or the time for that anymore. So we are reliant on systems. And AI is just another system. Whether it's agriculture, power, garbage collection, sewage systems, all of these things are now kind of intertwined with our lives. And we wouldn't know how to survive without those, I think, is the reality of it. So whether we like it or not, we have these systems. So then the next question is, what happens if they fail? And that's a good question, and they do fail. We recently had a power outage at Heathrow and that transformer caught fire, and it caused huge amounts of disruption, but no loss of life. So all of our systems are designed so they have what's known as autonomous capability. So if air traffic control goes down, airplanes don't fall out of the sky. Airplanes, the pilots are completely capable of flying them independently of the air traffic control. Air traffic control just schedules arrivals and departures. Pilots have radar on board the aircraft. Aircraft actually know their surroundings. They can continue to fly. So all of these things have autonomous capability. And all of these things have resilience built in. So when you go into these, I'll show you a picture of a data center with thousands of racks with 20 computers each, so lots and lots of machines in there. That's replicated. So when you turn on your phone and do a Google search, it's very rare that Google won't respond. Because if one data center is out of service for maintenance or because there's a power outage in that region, they just send you a request to somewhere else. So if you're watching a Netflix movie, you're not the only one watching that movie around the world. There will be millions of people watching it, especially if it's a new release. Just like we saw from the library actually last week, when a new book comes out, everyone wants that book. They've only got 6 licenses, they're all out. Well, on Netflix, there may be 10 million people watching the same movie at the same time. And there is management on the network that makes sure that these requests get distributed globally. Not everyone is able to watch that movie from one data center in California. It would cause absolute, just like if everyone went to the same Tesco's, it would cause absolute chaos. We distribute our workloads around the world, and we do the same on the network. We do the same with computing. We distribute our workloads around the world. So yeah, so we are reliant on AI. We have built the systems so they have fail-safes built in. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay, so we looked at what AI can do, things like computer vision, machine translation, and I kind of touched upon the fact that it's human-like, it mimics human behavior. And I want to show you an example of creativity with AI. So this lady here, Aisha Dennis Gokchin, she's a classically trained concert pianist. She's famous for her recitals of Mozart, Chopin, Liszt, and so on. She's also composed her own original music. I happen to be a super fan and a friend of hers. And she's now in LA, she's not in London anymore, but she used to have a lot of concerts in London. She started using AI to bring back to life the musicians who are no longer with us. And the reason she's doing this is that she's realised that for classical musicians particularly, that the audiences, young people aren't coming to these concerts. They don't have as much interest in this sort of music. How do you get young people in? So she wants to do things that might interest young people. I'll show you the videos. She's playing, so and this composition is in the style of Mozart. So she's programmed the AI to compose a piece of music and the accompaniment to her playing essentially. So these are all AI performers. She's the conductor, and she's then animated the conductor who moves along to her, conducting her own piece. So she's done this to show that you can use AI alongside human creativity. And that was the idea, because it doesn't replace human beings. It augments what she can do. And she can do things that you couldn't do without AI. She can bring back these musicians to life. I thought it was just an interesting little thing that she doesn't want AI to take her job away. I'll talk about that in a minute.
Can you show that link via the computer club email?
This one? Yeah, I can. I'll probably stop that there.
She screened during the concert.
Yeah. She did all of that. So she played all of that. She composed all of that.
But the screen is on.
So
There you go.
the screen itself is the animation rather is generated by AI, but it was composed by her.
She
So that.
plays without looking at the keyboard.
Oh yeah, she can play without looking at the keyboard. She's been playing since she was 10. She doesn't even look at the keyboard. So actually, before we cover this, I'll just cover a quick question. Does AI replace human beings? So there's a big concern that we'll all be done out of jobs, right? Because AI will take over our jobs. And this same argument actually was used in 1849. Remember the 12 bottom martyrs? So people thought that the steam mills would take away our jobs. And if you look back through history, there are several innovations and points in history where technology has been seen as a replacement to human beings. It's very rarely that human beings are replaced by technology. Our jobs might change, right? There aren't so many people in coal mining now, so jobs change over time. So I don't think AI will replace people. AI might replace certain jobs. But I think the biggest risk to human beings is not that they get replaced by AI, is that they don't know enough about AI to be useful. So just like if you couldn't drive a car, I think this is the last century thing, that driving a car is not such an exciting skill anymore. But in the last century, being able to drive a car was a real plus. Right? It gave you an edge of somebody who didn't know how to drive a car. Nowadays you'd use a driverless car like Waymo. No one wants to drive a car anymore if you're a kid. But there are certain skills. If you can't use a computer, you can't get a job. If you can speak a foreign language, it gives you another skill. So having AI awareness is just another skill that makes you more employable or more useful as a human being in society. At least that's my take on it. Okay, so ways to use AI. So AI can do lots of things, and I've tried to classify them here in kind of, these aren't official terms, these are just terms that have come up. So one way you can use AI, and I'm talking mainly here about text or language or documents, to expand. So you can give it a short question. Can you make an itinerary for my visit to Prague? I'm going to be staying in the old town. I've got 4 days. What should I see? So there's one sentence, and what you'll get out of that, it'll expand that into a whole 4-day itinerary. So that's what I call expand. Give it a question and ask it to generate some ideas. It expands what you're giving it. The alternative to expand is synthesize. Give it a document and ask it to summarize. I've got this massive great report, I can't be bothered to read it. What are the salient points? Can you just tell me what the key points are? It'll read your document and actually give you the key points. It does that really well. Or I've got this research paper and it's got lots of different views. Can you categorize the views and just put them in, are these good, the pros and cons? It does that really well. So you can give it a big amount of text and it will chunk it down to a small amount of text. So those are kind of a natural pairing. Another thing it can do is transform. When you looked at one of those things, it can translate text. So that's transforming text. But you might have scribbled a very hasty set of notes that you've taken, like at a meeting here, and you might want it to be rewritten in a more polished form. Can you take my scrappy notes and make it look like someone's written it with a little bit of care? Or write a letter that looks like it's come from a solicitor. So you can get it to transform your text into something else. Evaluate. Can you fact check? Can you score this? Can you give it some grade? This is either qualitative or quantitative scoring. So fact checking, I did this, I might do it as an example if we have time afterwards. Really good for research. So you might have a research paper. So people are often concerned that AI makes things up, and it can make things up. There are instances where it gives you nonsense. But if you give it a paper, a research paper, and ask for it to pull out information from that paper, it'll go read that paper and pull the information out. It actually even told me that the question I'd asked for, that specific thing wasn't in the paper, and it may not be able to give the information. So I asked it to try again and look for what it can find, and it did. And then I asked it to put it in chronological order, and it did. So in a few minutes, I was able to pull out some really key things out of a paper, and they're all factually correct. In fact, I could go back in the paper and find those things.
So, do you do that on a PC? Do you do it?
You can do it on a PC or on your phone.
But
I'm going to look at
do
that.
you have to have an app? How
Yes, you need an app. You need the app. You need the AI
on your
app.
phone?
Yes.
And
So
on-
we'll
and
talk
on a-
about the apps you can have. Yeah.
And on a PC?
And the same apps are available on the PC. They're available on the web, and I'll show you them on my PC afterwards.
Like the exam papers like GCSE, A level.
Yeah.
The AI would be able to mark it.
So,
and give
right.
it.
So this is what the kids are using, right? So when people talk about transform, so if your task is to write an essay, this gets used a lot by college kids or school kids, because they can write something, or they can find something that already exists and transform it into something that looks original. Now, one nice or bad thing, if you do that on Google or a normal app, or a normal bit of software, you get what's known as a deterministic response. So if you ask question A, you'll get response B. It's always the same. So whoever asks that question, the same question, they'll always get the same response. An AI system, just like a human being, is not deterministic. In fact, it's non-deterministic. Just like people here, if I ask you, how are you? One day you might say, I'm fine. Another day, oh, terrible day. So, you don't know what someone's going to say until they respond. You don't know what the AI is going to say. So teachers have a hard time, because if 5 students use this to write their essay, it would be different. If they used old-fashioned methods like Google and cut and paste, they'd all turn up with the same thing in class. The teachers say, well, obviously you've just copied that off the internet, right? So go away. But here, they'll get 5 different essays. So yeah, so you can use this to create stuff. Clearly, that's not the intent of the teacher. But schools are aware of this now. There are some bits of software that actually will look.
Will it still show up on a plagiarism?
Yeah, so like there is a bit of software called Turn It In, which looks for these things. So there are now AI agents that look to see if this the work's being done by AI. So yeah, so they've thought of that. But yeah, so you can create documents with this. But it's good at doing that. Some other things you can do, chat. Like I said, this is a chat bot, a mock interview. I actually did a mock interview as part of the test, so I thought I might do for today. You can just ask it, how's it going? You can have a chat with an AI bot if you want, and you can have a conversation. Now, again, be careful. They are, like I said earlier, they are designed to try to be helpful and try to sort of finish a conversation. They're not chatty. So if you ask it how's it going, it will say, I'm fine, how are you? Or something, something fairly bland or banal. But you can ask it, you can prompt it in a way that says, give me open-ended answers, try not to close the conversation. If you tell it to be more like a therapist, it will behave like that. You can prompt it to behave in the way you want.
There are people having therapy.
And people are using it for therapy because some people prefer talking to a machine than to a person. So that's interesting. You can use it to take actions. You can use it very simplistically as a personal assistant. I don't think that's a particularly good use case, but you can do that. You can use it to set up reminders and stuff like that. You can do that just with simple things on your phone, to-do lists and calendars. But you can use an AI assistant to do that. Tony's like this. I know the other day we were in front of the Taj Mahal. You can edit and create photos. You can edit and create videos. So there's a whole bunch of things that you've just seen. You can create music clearly with this. So these are different ways we can use AI. Has anyone done any of these things? Yeah, anyone tried anything? Yeah?
A lot of chat.
A lot?
Chat.
You use it for chat?
For
Yeah.
information, yeah.
Right.
Rewriting, yeah.
Right, okay, good. And which AI agent did you use? Do you remember? Which one? ChatGPT?
ChatGPT.
Okay, that is probably one of the better known ones, so good.
Who does it run by? Like,
Right, good.
unlike Gemini's Google, who runs the...
So here we are. So these are the well-known ones. There are others actually. So ChatGPT is probably the best-known one. It's run by a company called OpenAI. I don't know why they call themselves OpenAI because it's a very closed, highly secretive company. They're an odd bunch. But yeah, OpenAI owns ChatGPT. It's a proprietary commercial system. Google have an AI agent called Gemini. Microsoft have Copilot. And WhatsApp and Facebook have Meta AI. And if you look on your WhatsApp, you'll see Meta AI is actually available as one of your contacts. You can talk to Meta AI and you can ask it questions. So that's one of the places where you can use AI.
Do they function the same?
So they all use a similar approach. So underneath all of these different ones is a generative large language model, their own one. They all have different ones actually. And actually the ones you get for as a free user and a paid user are slightly different. You get a bigger model if you pay, you get a smaller model if you don't pay. But they're different, so it really kind of links back to where they've come from. And I'd encourage you to play around with them because they do behave differently. Microsoft, their background is office work, right? Office suites and doing productivity tasks. Copilot's really good at that. It's good at writing documents and making Excel sheets and doing tasks that you would do at work. So I think Copilot's particularly good at that. It's also good at just general chat and so on. Gemini from Google has got a massive knowledge base because they've got the Google database. So when it comes to like world knowledge and reasoning, it's got a big database to pull that from. So it's strong in that area. Meta AI comes from a social feeds like Facebook and WhatsApp. So it's quite chatty because of that. And ChatGPT kind of, I would say jack of all trades. They all overlap in large ways. But yeah, ChatGPT is one of the well-known ones. It's probably one of the first ones that was made accessible to people to do things like video and photos and stuff like that. Though they can all do things like this. All of them can take input from you typing in. That's normally the way you'd interact with these. Most of them also have voice input. So just like you can make a voice message on WhatsApp, you can talk to these. They'll understand you talking, but they'll normally reply back in words. You can ask it to speak to you. But they can also take input from a document. You can cut and paste a document, or you can send a link to a document, or you can attach a photograph and ask it to transform that document or picture or something. So you can use these things. Now, one thing I would caution against, all of these things run in the cloud. They all are adaptive learners. They take information in and store it. So don't share personally identifiable information. Don't give them your phone number, your bank, certainly not your banking information. So if you are using these things, just be careful about what information you share. Giving it a document to make sure it doesn't have any personally identifiable information in there. Anything that's personal to you and you want to keep secret, don't share it with an AI agent. So that's the first thing. Now, companies use AI agents for business. So if you're a business and you're bidding for some work, you will put a bid out. You'll create a document that determines your competitive edge. And you clearly don't want that going to your competitors. But they do use AI to create those reports. So what they do, they don't use these ones in the cloud. They download it onto their own machines and run a small version of an AI agent on their own machines. So they're not putting any information that's commercially sensitive into the shared cloud model. They're using it on their own systems. So they have to be careful about that. As a normal, independent user, you can use these things. Just be careful about what you might share with them. And that brings us on to the next thing about prompts. How do you communicate with an AI agent? So as I said earlier, the way you communicate is with what are known as prompts. You put a prompt in and you get a response back. And when you're writing a prompt, be clear, be specific, and provide some context, give some background around what you want to do. So here's some example ones. And actually ask AI to generate these for me actually. So don't just say, write a summary. Just like if you imagine you get a builder into your home and you wanted a quote for an extension, you wouldn't say, hello Bob, can you give me a quote? Because you wouldn't get very much. You say, can you give me a quote, and I want this extension to be 3 meters by 5 meters, like a patio door over there, and I want some tiles. The more information you give, the more useful the information you're going to get back is going to be. So saying write 2 paragraphs, this is just write a summary, you haven't really given it much to go on. Summary of this and then say what the topic is. Or maybe you'll give it the document. Generated, this is being very specific. There can be 5 creative ways to improve this thing. Explain this complex thing in simple terms, as if teaching a beginner, so the language will be simple. You can also ask it what kind of tone you want. In fact, I think I've got that on the next page. Yeah, try and avoid open-ended questions. It doesn't really understand those. Don't be vague. Try to avoid using jargon or technical terms unless they're important for the task. If you're asking for help with something that is technical, you might have to use a technical term. Provide context and background information so the AI agent understands the task that you're trying to get help with. Yeah, you can define the tone. You can say, I want the response to be formal or informal or humorous. If you're creating something for work, you'd want it formal. If you're creating, some information for friends, you might want a different tone. And you can choose the tone you want, and it will respect that. You can ask for the text to be formatted in a particular way. I want it to be, I want all this information in a table, or I want it in text, or I want it in bullet points, or I want it as a prose. So tell it how you want the response. Oftentimes, one thing that AI sometimes struggles with is if you give it too much stuff. So sometimes you ask it to do something and you'll get the first response back, and then ask it to improve it. So you might say, okay, I've got that, thank you very much. Can you now put it in bullet points? Can you now put it in a table? So it's better to do it that way, actually, I found. So if you ask it for some information, get the information, and then ask it to format it. If you ask it for the information and the formatting, sometimes it doesn't do a good job of collecting the information because it gets hung up on this bit. Keep the prompts brief and informative.
Can you be used to set up Excel spreadsheets?
Yeah, you can ask it for any particular, and actually that's what Copilot's very good at that.
It's
Because it uses Microsoft systems.
Exactly. So it knows. So here's, and actually that's an interesting thing. So you can use an AI tool and tell it to use another tool, another software tool. So you can actually say to the AI, can you create an Excel spreadsheet? And it will go away and use Excel just like you would. But it knows how to use Excel. It knows how to use Word. So you can say, I want this in Word, I want this in the PDF. You can ask for it. You can ask it to use another tool. So I think we've talked quite a lot. I thought it might be good to do another exercise. So we've got two or three different ways we can do this. We can all do this in groups, and we can come around and help you do these things. You can just pick a topic. I've just got these. These aren't necessarily these just off the top of my head. You want to write a letter, create a picture, make an itinerary, summarize a document. We can do those things, or you can come up with your own ideas. Maybe I'll just start by showing you ChatGPT on here. Then let me just close this now. Close that. Right, I've got 4 of them up there then now. I don't need him anymore. Right, I've got ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, and Meta AI. So let me start with ChatGPT. So they all look pretty much the same actually. So you've got a page here with a text box where you can enter your text. And you can log in. I haven't got an account, I'm just using the freebie one, so I don't need to log in. And you can use voice instead of typing. You can talk at it. Let's just type something in. And you can attach a document, you can add a photo or a document you've got. You can search for things. you can do some stuff for students use, obviously, so you've got different ways of doing it. Help me with that homework, that's a common one. You can search the web for things. Don't know where these come from, no idea. I don't even know who most of these people are. Or you can attach a document. You can attach your own images of documents. And but you notice that you'll only do that if you've got an account. Right? You need a login for that and login for that. So if you wanted to use other apps like using Word or Excel or whatever, you need a login. You can do images for free. So this is where you start getting differences between the free unsubscribed version and the subscribed version. So let's not search the web. Let's what can I help you with? Let's turn the search off. Let's just ask it. Any good ideas or questions to ask an AI?
Well, I asked it to summarise one of the videos, which was an hour and a half long, and I don't know whether you can do that for free, but I just pasted a link into.
So I don't know if this does ChatGPT do that, does it?
It did, and it did a summary.
So you
Pasted the link in, and it gave me a summary of the whole video in like seconds. But I was signed in at that point. It just gave me a summary
from YouTube.
Yeah, I was just going to get a video from YouTube. Let's find a
David Attenborough one.
yeah, something safe to look at rather than dodgy. Right, this will do, won't it? So we get this. I'm going to get the link to it. Take that.
And leopards are the most versatile of all the big cats, adept at finding cover in the most unpromising places.
Go back to ChatGPT. We say what? Can I type? No. Usually better.
It's very good at giving questions to make it more specific.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how long that video is. That might have been a long video. It might have been a 2-hour program. Might take a while because I've got to watch it.
Well, it doesn't. I think it just reads the subtitles.
Maybe, yeah. Someone else. Let me just try that then.
In 3
Let me just try that. In what, sorry?
Well, all right. Let's see what it does.
I was going to say 3. Right. Let's just see what the face. Right. So that's not a great prompt because I haven't given it very much to go on. Right? I've just said, here's a video.
Yeah.
Can you just give me a summary of this video? There you are. So we didn't have to watch a video, now we already know what it's about. And we know it's in 4K, it's narrated by David Attenborough, it's a BBC Earth documentary. So, yeah, as Tony says, very quickly it's able to give you some information. So if you were not sure if you wanted to watch it, this might be a good thing to check out first if you go away and look at a video. So all we did was just point it to a video and it was able to watch it for us. And it can do the same thing with text. You can ask it to read something and tell you something about that. So actually the one I did yesterday is I found a wiki page about someone. Just think of someone we want to know something about.
There was an article I read this morning, and I just couldn't understand it.
Where was it?
And I just wondered, how would you go from a newspaper article and put it into ChatGPT?
Yeah, you could give it a link to the thing. So and some newspapers have paywalls and so on, which makes it harder sometimes. But well, let's just put in it's on Wiki. Let's see. There's bound to be something about him on Wiki, right? So there's Wikipedia about Elton John. I'm not particularly bothered about this reading all of that, but I'll copy that, just the Wikipedia, and this time we'll go to Google. Link.
It might have found it without that.
Oh, maybe let's see if we can find it. Yeah, see. So it's looking at that document.
Didn't you have to send it a link?
So it was an embedded link actually. So that is a link there, even though you can't see the HTTP address. It's taking a long time, isn't it? Oh right, okay, we could try that. Okay, I'm going to give up on that because there's not doing a very good job of that, is it? Gemini's failed already.
Let's start it again.
Let's start again. Let's stop the first one. It's not making more progress, is there?
Might be more.
Whilst I was thinking, let's give that task to Copilot.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Here we go. So there's a long wiki article, and it's just giving me the bullet points out of there. So, and then
What? What would happen if you asked it to identify inaccuracies in the Wikipedia?
yeah, should we try that? Okay, let me just ask it to do something. So it's found some information. Let's see if we can list his songs. There you are. Let's pull that out of that wiki. And we can go back into the wiki and see if this matches, but that's what it's determined from that. So we haven't had to look at the wiki page. And it's made a nice table. I didn't actually ask it to put it in a table, but it's done that. So Copilot actually I find is quite good at formatting things in a sort of business-like way, because that's one of the things. So okay, let's see. Is the wiki accurate? I don't know what it will do with that.
Yes. Alive.
Yeah. So here we are. So it's verified this data with other sources. So it says Britannica. I have no idea how accurate Britannica is. But yeah, so again, any differences? Sources. There are a few subtle differences in emphasis, and it's listed the ones that it thinks might be relevant. So it says that the same on the name's the same on both of them. Yeah. So yeah, just this is a simplistic thing, but yeah, very quickly you can sort of pull information out of a document and gain a better understanding without having to read the document. It would take me quite a long time to do a search of all the different documents and try and find the differences, and this has done it very quickly. So maybe a sort of silly example, but you can sort of see the power of how these tools work. Let's see if Gemini's... no, Gemini's not doing very well here for some reason. We'll stop that. Yeah. We'll give Gemini another chance in a minute.
Who runs the Gemini?
That's Google.
Oh, Google.
Gemini does what I have used it, but didn't like that using that wiki, obviously. So here's ChatGPT.
Yeah, very good.
And we use that to summarise the video. We use Copilot to examine a document, happen to be a wiki document. And here's Meta AI. Should we try an interview?
Yeah. Christmas job, which one play Father Christmas?
July. Have to get a white beard, stick on beard and stuff. Temporary Christmas job. Do we have a mock interview? Let's see if it does that. Let's get to character. I'll play the hiring manager and ask for questions. Tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're into this job. 3 at weekends.
I love children.
Keep this Christmas spirit in check during the interview. Just give me some advice. Instead putting ho ho ho.
Yeah.
So that's actually quite useful feedback, right?
Yeah.
So anything about skills or experience you can bring to the team.
It hasn't asked you what the role is.
No.
Is that relevant?
Might be. So you get the idea what you can do. So the responses are very much like a human being, right? So when we talk about mimicking humans, yeah, it's quite good. So if you can use this for all sorts of practical things. We looked at silly examples here, but you can see how this is very powerful. You can use it for real life situations. Anyone got any other ideas for trying things?
Well, I just had trouble getting the link off the article I was reading, so I just took a screenshot of the article.
You can do that.
And I was impressed, but I only tested one.
So right, that's a good point. So if you don't have a link to the article or you don't have the document, you can cut and paste it. So you can copy the text and paste it in. Just put some quotes around it or some delimiters so it knows that that's not part of the question. So just say, summarise this text. You can put just some delimiters, star, 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 or hash, hash, hash. Paste in your thing, hash, hash, hash at the end again, and it will go through, read that document and summarise it, or explain it, or whatever you want.
Salim, back to the holiday itinerary, it's like
Yeah?
6 hours in Rome.
Should we try that?
Yes.
Should we try that?
Well,
Should we give Gemini a chance to shine?
yes.
No good.
Can you voice activate it, or do you have to type in?
You can voice activate it.
Yeah.
I'll type in here because then we have a sort of a record of it here. Yeah. What, a 6 day itinerary?
Yeah.
This is easy for it.
A 6 day, 6 hour.
6 hour, did you say? 6 hour itinerary. I'm visiting Rome. Taking me a 6 hour itinerary. When are you visiting Rome? Now? Which month?
This
In
month,
June.
yeah.
In November.
Next week.
Right, next week.
Yeah, yes.
Let's try that. Gemini seems to be struggling. I don't know why. Doesn't seem to be online right now. It's odd.
It's asking me to upload, do you think?
Yeah, it wants me to. Yeah, it always comes up on.
Maybe we should click the tools.
Yeah,
It's not specified.
No, it doesn't want to.
Rubbish.
No, that is unusual. Unusual is doing that. I've never had it wait for that long. So there may be a problem there. So you can just see down here, which took a large language model. So that's a large language model it's using this 2.5 flash. If you want to do some mathematics or software code, they've got a different large language model which will have maths information.
Great.
And if you want to pay and use the best model, you've got to pay for that. But there's these 2 or 3 to use. This is kind of general purpose. But I don't know why that's not working. That's really interesting.
I think it's your software update. Yeah.
No,
I just did it and it's done it.
You did?
Yeah, I've just done it on the
Oh,
phone.
really?
Yeah.
Oh. So
I wasn't even as polite as you and it's come back.
Oh. Yeah, I don't want AI pros. That's what it's trying to get me to get. How strange. And I'm actually logged in. And knows I've got a Google account.
I don't know, but we're starting in the Coliseum at 9 AM.
Oh, okay.
That takes 6 hours.
Yeah, you're in the queue. Well, give that one to Meta AI. Let's see here.
Lovely.
So it's giving you timing. Yeah,
Nothing.
yeah. So there you are. There's
Brilliant.
there's a day.
In seconds,
Can you
that's
see what a
fantastic.
spreadsheet would look like through Copilot if you wanted to do an Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah. Okay. You've got to give them some data to make the spreadsheet. Then that's the.
Why don't we copy paste everything that came back on the answer?
Okay, let's we could try and turn that itinerary into a spreadsheet. You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
Or
Good idea.
a PowerPoint.
Very good idea.
okay, let's take that.
Pictures of each thing.
Control copy. Let's now take that. So we're taking that from that AI, and we're going to go to Microsoft now. Put this text into what do you want? Into PowerPoint.
Excel
Spreadsheet.
spreadsheet.
An
Oh,
Excel
it's a spreadsheet. Sorry. Now I'm going to put my delimiter. I'm going to use. Okay, and then
What's the delimiter?
it just tells it that's my pasted information. So it just knows where to start to look for the text I put in.
So you put it at the top and the
Here's how
bottom.
your
Yeah.
itinerary would look. Yay. Thanks, Marta.
You can copy this in Excel format and columns.
Excellent.
So it's put step 1 is just put it into a table basically.
You know where you're going.
Yeah. And And then it says, let me know if you'd like it styled as a printable itinerary or expanded with travel tips. So it's ask if you want some more columns in your spreadsheet with some more information.
Can they add images?
Yeah, add travel tips. Let's add that. Let's see what it comes back with. So now it's added the travel tips, and we've got a new column now.
Brilliant.
So it's added where you're going to be, what time, what you're visiting, and some
Water and
tips.
a hat.
Bring water and a hat. So yeah, so you can see very quickly you can generate some very useful information, and you can have it printed the way you'd like.
Ask it if it can add some pictures. I like that suggestion. Whoever said add some pictures.
Of each
Stop.
location, yeah. It hasn't put them in the table, it's just given me some pictures. Add these to the printable document. It's just giving a link to the image and the image reference. So if you print that, you could choose to open those out and get the picture.
Can you ask it to translate a passage or an article from, say, from a newspaper?
Yeah. That's relatively easy actually. So if we go to, where's a good place to go for an article? Just the Gardeners I used to know. So yeah, it's coming up here.
Just press continue and come back again because it's polite about you.
No.
Yeah, and then just go back to the other page and it's gone. Mm.
On the phone, it's always making it hard for me to read.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take this article. Actually, let's just take the link to the article. Copy. Go back to Copilot. To French. Put the link in.
There you go.
So there you are. So that's very easy actually for the AI to do. So you can either give it a document or you can point it to a document and it will go away and translate it. So hopefully that's inspired you to use some of these tools. So let's say I've just, there's a number of them. There's ChatGPT here. There's Google, which I didn't manage to get working, but you did. So my apologies. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. You have to find out why this isn't working for me.
There's also something that's quite interesting, which I found out recently, is that there are entire web pages for prompts. When you can't think of a question or what you want to talk about,
There are.
you Google prompts, and there's all the things that you.
So I've actually even seen online.
Well, you ring Leonard, who's very, very good at writing prompts, aren't you?
Well, I've seen
So how
an
to talk to your
example
machine.
online where someone has used one AI agent to talk to another AI agent. So he's got them talking to one another. He's just sort of sitting in the middle as a referee. So this one's asking another AI, so he gets a question, cuts and pastes it to the other one, and they're going back and forth. So you can play games like that. Oh, now it seems to come alive. Maybe it just wanted me to accept something I didn't see. I clicked on it too quickly.
And to access all of those, you either put the name into the search engine and then click on.
Yeah.
Or you download the app onto your phone.
So right, you can do both. So you can download. I'll show you. I've got the app on my phone, so we can look at that in a minute. Actually, how we do for time.
All free apps.
These are all free apps. Yeah. So they're free to use. There might be some limitations if you don't subscribe. There might be some limitations on the size of document or number of times you can use it. But in all practical cases, you're unlikely to hit the limits. I don't think. We've just done a whole bunch of silly things there, and it didn't stop us. So there are apps on the phone. Would you like to see those? So you can switch. I can turn this off now. So you can see my screen now. So I've got these apps on my phone. So I've got all of them. I've got ChatGPT, I've got Gemini from Google, Copilot from Microsoft, and Meta AI from Facebook and WhatsApp. So you can go into any of these just like we did on the computer. So open up that app there, you get this picture here. Now, this is Meta AI, which takes a lot of information from social feeds, and a lot of people post their images and stuff on here. So you can go and browse other people's images, and so you'll see things coming up. But you can ask questions down here, so you can close that, and you can ask it to describe an image or something like that. So people have got things like for Halloween, but you can just write your own thing. Let's just say hello and see what it says. So I think it's trying to do an image actually. That's probably not a good use case. Yeah, a lot of these are images. I found this app I always find awkward to use compared to the one on the computer, to be honest, because it kind of guides you into doing a specific bunch of tasks which you don't necessarily want. Yeah, it's asking me if I'm interested in this particular image here, this night dream. I'm not particularly. Yeah, there's the chat. There's the chat box there. That's better. Yeah, how's the day going so far?
What are you in right now? Sorry.
So this is Open AI, Meta AI. Sorry, Meta AI. So let's just go back into it. So let's start again from the top. So open the app, and there's. Let's just go back again. So the opening screen has some images on it. Now I think if you just start from this screen, you'll just get the images. But there's a chat button down here. And also the little menu button up in the top corner, if I click on that, it gives me the chat option. So it starts with vibes, which are things that people have posted. A lot of people seem to post videos onto this app, because it's a social media app. It comes from WhatsApp and Facebook, so you see a lot of other people's videos and things, which I've got no real interest in. But if you go to chat, then you can start typing down here various questions, just like we did on the computer. So that's the Meta AI. This is ChatGPT, which I think has got a little bit of a simpler interface. It just says, what can I help you with? It's got some suggestions, help you write, analyze data, brainstorm, more options. Yeah, make a plan, surprise me, analyze images. So you've got various different things down here. And then you just type down here. You can talk at it. So
surprise me.
So try surprise me, see what it does. Horoscope. What were the options? Sorry. Horoscope for today. Seasonal calendar analysis. Tip from the Farmer's Almanac. Couldn't find one for today. Okay. But yeah, so you can do some nonsensical things like that. But you can use it just like we did before. You can ask about things. You can create the itinerary again. So you can go in here, create an itinerary for a trip. Let's see how long the trip is. It's a 4-day trip to Prague in November. Let's try that.
Seconds.
And there we are. So it's even told me something about the weather I might expect and what to bring along. So yeah, so it's told me what I could do on those 4 days in Prague. So I might use that from there in a couple of weeks' time.
Salim, are there any phones that come with an AI already as part of their operating system? Because Dante did show me, he said it was on my phone, and it was very useful for drawing. And when I tried to do the same thing on ChatGPT, it wasn't.
Right. So now, so those are the apps. So what I've shown you there are the apps where you can directly access the AI systems from these 4 different companies. But they are embedded in the phone. So Google uses AI. So if you've got an Android phone, you have Google Gemini built in as your personal assistant. In the same way that Apple has Siri. Apple don't really have an AI agent. They're a little bit different to the other guys. They have Siri, which you can just talk to and it will do things. It's a bit like it's a bit like a simple Alexa. Can you turn lights on? Can you play music? Can you do this stuff? But it's not an AI agent in the way that these things are. But Google has a whole bunch of things. So if you've got any Google apps on your phone, So like Google search, have you used anyone used photo search? You can look at a plant and it'll tell you what that is, or a tree and identify it. So Google search uses AI. So those sort of things are built into your phone. So yeah, there are some things that are built into the phone. You can get, I've got Gemini on my phone, it's built into the phone.
So that's what he was referring to.
Yeah, most likely, yeah. And if you've got a Windows PC, it'll have Copilot built into it. You don't need to have the app because Copilot is built in as part of the Microsoft Office suite, so you'll have that. So more and more systems are having access to AI kind of built in as part of the system. The next generation of PCs and the latest phones actually have the ability to run AI locally. So Apple phones can already do that. We do Face ID, it's running that locally. It's using AI to identify face. It knows which features are relevant to being able to distinguish between people, like distance between eyes, and there's a whole bunch of different features that it looks at. It looks at a 3D image actually of the face.
What do you mean by AI locally?
So it's not going out and getting
Just doing it on your
connectivity,
phone.
it's doing it in the phone. And so right now, so all these apps, and I'm using these apps, I'm not doing any processing locally. When I ask the question, that question is being sent to their data center, it's doing the processing and returning a response. So if it didn't have 4G or Wi-Fi, it wouldn't work. But the Face ID works even if you're on a plane in airplane mode because it does it on the phone. The next generation of PCs, so current PCs, actually phones are ahead of PCs in that respect. PCs can do some AI processing, phones can do some AI processing on the phone. The next generation of PCs will be able to do AI on the PC. It's not such a big deal because PCs always tend to be connected to the network. You know, you've got access to Wi-Fi or network in some way when you're at home, so you can always access these apps. But as I said, some business uses require you to do the AI locally and not remotely for privacy reasons. And so being able to do the AI locally matters.
I'm confused. I used AI on the PC
Mhm.
and I've got the app.
Yeah, and when you
So why?
So when you use it on the PC, you're just like I am now. You're connecting to these data centers. So the processing, when you ask it a question, your question is actually sent to one of those data centers we saw a picture of. It then creates the response and sends it to your PC. So the processing isn't done on your PC. You're accessing it via your PC, and just in the way I can access it from here as well. But you're not running locally on your PC. So there is a number of users who need the AI to be run on their local machine, either mostly for security reasons actually. Oh, some researchers want to run it on their local machine, and that's why they do.
So on the phone, it's locally.
Some things are locally, not when you use these. When you use the app, hardly anything runs locally on the phone. The reason for that is the large language model is too big. The actual model that the AI uses to generate the responses, because it's got these 150 trillion words in it, it's condensed down actually. It doesn't end up as 150 trillion words. It still ends up as a pretty big model. There are versions of AI that are much smaller that you can install on your PC or on your phone. The Face ID one is a very specific one that runs on your phone. Voice recognition, which is on PCs and phones, is a very specific one which can run. It only does one task. You can't ask it questions and stuff like that. It can identify your voice and turn it into text. That runs on your phone or on your PC. But most of these other AI systems, when you're asking them to do things, your question goes off to the data center, gets turned into a response, and then gets sent back from there.
And on the phone?
And same with the phone.
There's no difference between
no,
the phone?
between the phone and the PC, there's no difference. When you're using AI, you're using those big data centers that we saw earlier. Hence this concern about how green is it? Because we're using lots of energy in these data centers to create itineraries and so on. We're not the big consumers, right? I mean, the big companies are the big consumers of this stuff. But nevertheless, you're using resources on someone else's data center when you access an AI program. And that will be the case for nearly all use cases. There'll be a tiny percentage of ones that will run on your phone and on your PC. But there is not a big demand for that.
You said that with Microsoft computers you have Copilot embedded.
Yeah.
So how does that differ from not being embedded?
So that's a good question actually. So the difference is the way it interacts with the other software on there. So here I asked the AI agent to format it into Excel, and then it went away and did what I asked it to do. when it's embedded on the computer or on the phone, it can be set up so it automatically has access to all of those tools. So when you are typing in Word, it can do things like spelling correction. It can help you with formatting. So it can act as a personal assistant to the tasks you're doing if you set it up that way. So
what do you do? Do you log into it?
So if you notice on the PC today, I don't know if you notice, like this Copilot window pops up every now and then, and most of us see that and just brush it away because you're not really bothered with it. If you go to the trouble of actually accessing it, you can start to do your tasks from within Copilot, and it will then have access to the other tools you've got on your PC. Well, automatically take that.
Same thing will happen with Google and Gemini, or Google uses this Gemini.
So it's a similar thing. So you can use Google Gemini as a separate thing, or you can use Gemini as an agent on your phone. So I can say, hey Google, and talk to Gemini on my phone.
It will go, it will search with.
So Google is just a search engine, but what Google have done, because the AI engine is so powerful, they've already got an AI engine, so they've started to embed the AI engine within Google Search. So now when you do Google Search, you'll notice the first thing you get back is AI summary.
Or Gemini.
Yeah. So they're blending all these things. Where there were separate tools, and there was a search engine that was Google, there was an AI engine, there were tools for word processing, there was speech recognition. They were all separate bits of software. They're all being coalesced into one tool.
So if I type in Google, something will happen.
Yeah, when you use Google now, you're nearly always accessing an AI agent.
Gemini.
Yeah.
So
For Google, it's Gemini. Yes.
Yeah, we don't have to have an app in our.
You don't know. You don't need to download the app. Correct. You can use it from within Google. Yeah. Okay.
So do you need to have Excel on your laptop to use Excel via?
That's a good question. So the AI agent can format it into Excel format. As I said, then you can print this out. But you'll need the Excel app if you now want to paste it into the into a printable Excel format.
Yeah. So you get an image of the spreadsheet.
Correct.
You be able to
Correct. Yeah. You can ask it to download it in Excel format, but you'll now need Excel to access it. Yeah, so it doesn't give you free access to the tools. If you buy it with the tools, then it does. But yeah, so you can format things in a way, but you'll need the software then to access.
So does
that
it say
format.
to PowerPoint?
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. But in all of these companies, and then that's why all of these companies are moving to a subscription model. You used to be able to buy Word or buy Excel, buy Adobe. Most of these companies are moving away from that model because these things don't operate in isolation from one another anymore. They all are interlinked. And so what they want you to do is to pay a subscription, and then you can use all of the tools, and then AI is kind of an umbrella over the whole lot. And if you bought it individually, it's very hard for them to then figure out what you've got legal access to or not. It's much easier for them to say, you've got a license, and you can use all this stuff for a year, and at the end of the year, you've got to pay me again. And that's why they're moving away from this buy this stuff. Because if you buy all these things separately, they've really got no idea how they interlink commercially. Technically, there's no issue, but they want the money off of you. They don't want you to be using things that you haven't paid for.
So what would the overall license come up as?
So with Microsoft, they call it Office Microsoft 365. Yeah. And that includes all of their software tools. It includes Copilot. Google have Google Suite. And that includes all of their stuff, and it includes Gemini. So they all have a similar thing.
Yeah, I just asked Google which AI Bing uses.
All right.
And I got a very complicated answer.
Right.
Or a very long answer anyway. But it sort of starts saying Bing uses a combination of technologies, including OpenAI's GPT-4 model.
Correct.
And Microsoft's proprietary Prometheus AI model, and then it goes on and on.
Right, because Bing is a search tool, like Google search. So Bing is Microsoft's, hardly anyone uses Bing, but Microsoft like you to. It's not, Google is far more popular, but by far the best known. More so than Bing. There are others, DuckDuckGo's and other search engines. There are lots of search engines.
I mean, I find sometimes you get better answers than Bing.
Yeah, just like, so all of these tools have slightly different approaches. So just like I said, there's 3 or 4 or 5 different AI, in fact there's lots of different AI agents. You'll find that they'll all have a slightly different approach, so use the one that gives you the answers that you want. There's no right or wrong, they'll be slightly different. So Bing will use search, but search engines today use AI. The AI systems that they use internally are not the ones that make available to you and I. They have different models. So these large language models, there are lots of them. If anyone's interested, they can go on the website and find thousands of them. So, for example, if you're a researcher in medical research, people who are developing new drugs, developing vaccines, use a very specific large language model, which is all about folding proteins, and that's what the cancer research and stuff, those guys go there. That's the model they would use. They're not interested in translating languages, they're interested in looking at different ways of creating vaccines or medicines. So there is a specific language model for that. So there are thousands of language models. So we just looked at 4 popular ones for sort of consumer use, if you like. ChatGPT, Gemini, Meta AI, and Gemini. And Copilot, sorry. I think that's about it, really. I think we'll probably run out of stuff, unless anyone wants to do any AI on their own.
Just for fun, I use the ChatGPT and I upload image and they turn it into cartoon.
Yeah, that's really good.
Fun.
Yeah, a friend of mine does that with
very
all
well.
pictures. Yeah, he always sends out pictures of us in cartoon form after we've been out anyway. Yeah. And it's good at that. Yeah. Okay, thanks very much, folks.
Thank you.